Okay, so for this CAD lab, we will be basing the model on this question from the drawing lab. So you will have completed this in your drawing lab, and we'll make a model that can go along with that. So if you were to teach this to Leave Cert students, you would have the dimension drawn and a model to go along with it. Okay, so if you have that open beside you, it's on the drawing sheets from this week anyway, it'll be handy to look over the dimensions. So as per usual, I'm going to start off by drawing my planes of reference. And again, I'm not going to go through this step by step. If you need help to draw the planes of reference, look back at the other videos from the previous couple of weeks. So my horizontal plane, make that a planar surface, and do the same with the vertical plane. Now at this point, before you do anything more, I want you to make sure that it's sitting in the right position. So if the front plane is there, that the horizontal plane is coming forward from that. So this Z arrow down in the bottom left corner where we can see the axes, the horizontal plane should be in line with that Z axis there. The vertical plane should be in line with that Y axis. If it's not, that's why it'll come out back to front or upside down on your drawings. So if it's not, fix that now. Okay, so now I have my vertical plane and my horizontal plane. I'm just going to throw a color on that to make them stand out a bit before we go any further. Now, I'm going to start by drawing my plan view because the base of that rectangular based pyramid rests on the horizontal plane, so I can draw that very easily. So I'm going to start on the horizontal plane. I'm going to open a new sketch, and I'm going to just dimension it the exact same as is in the drawing there. So a rectangle, I'm going to say smart dimension, this edge is supposed to be 52, this bottom edge is supposed to be 80, and it's a distance of 20 mil from the XY line. Now, you'll notice that two lines are black and two lines are blue. So the shape is defined, but what isn't fully defined is the position. So if I get out to Smart Dimension, I can't drag it up and down because I have dimensioned this 20, but I can drag it left and right. Okay, but that's fine. It doesn't really make a difference. Just have it over to the left of the model because we need space on the right for our end view and our end elevation plane. So what I might do is just smart dimension that point to the origin there and have it, for example, 65 mil. So you can see now that sketch is black, that means it's fully defined. I'm going to add in a center line so we know the apex then is going to rest on that center line. So go up to sketch, add in a center line from the center of that vertical line on the left, the whole way through the vertical line on the right. And because it's an oblique pyramid, the apex doesn't rest above the center point, it rests somewhere out here to the right hand side. So again, I'm going to use the dimensions given to me in the drawing, and I can dimension that point out 36 mil from the edge there. So out at this end point now is going to be the apex, but that again is resting on the horizontal plane, so we need to draw a line up from that now. We can close that sketch, and from that I'm going to start a 3D sketch coming up from that endpoint. So go into sketch, click the drop down arrow and click 3D sketch, and then I'm going to do a center line. I'm going to go from that point vertically, press escape, so just check that that is vertical, so it should be perpendicular to the horizontal plane. If it isn't, if the line's still blue, just hold control, select the line, select the plane and say perpendicular. Now what I want to do is place a point on that line, so put a point on that line, and then I'm going to dimension that. So what I'm going to do is, I know it is a height of 72 from the ground, or from that XY line. So what I can do is click the point on the line, click that base point, and just dimension that to 72 mil. So what I have now is two separate sketches, one with a point, one with the base, and we can create a loft from that. So go up to Features, Lofted Boss Base. That sketch is already selected, so just if it wasn't, just make sure and click that point. Click the outline of your base, and it should give you a preview like that. Okay. If it doesn't, make sure that all the center lines, excuse me, are center lines and they're not solid lines. So tick that when you've it done, and that is the first part of that equation done. So I'm just going to stick a color on that to make it stand out a bit. So what we now have to do is we have to rotate that up into a different view. So if you read the question that was given to us, it says, so we have to rotate it until surface A is on the horizontal plane. This surface here is our surface A, so we have to rotate that down until it rests on the horizontal plane. To do that, we have to look in at an end view like that. So we need an end plane. We're going to project the outline of that onto the plane and rotate it down until it touches the XY line. So if I find a plane, that right plane, okay, it's not in the right position, so I need to create a new plane parallel to that on the other side of the object. So holding Control, I can drag the corner of that plane, and that will create a new plane. So you can set the distance whatever you want. I'm going to set that to about 220, and you can tick that now. On that plane now, I want you to sketch a planar surface. So we want to actually see that planar surface then in the drawn sheets. So on plane 1, start a new sketch. And just if yours actually does the same as that, so if I press normal 2, it is looking in the wrong direction. So it's looking in from the back. I don't want to look in that direction. To flip the normal, go back here, close the sketch first of all, right click and edit the feature of that plane, scroll down and click flip normal. So now if I press normal 2, it'll look in the proper direction. So start a sketch on that. Draw your traces. So your vertical trace, horizontal trace, and then you can draw the spline around the edges like that. Right, so when you have drawn that sketch for your auxiliary plane or your end plane, just go up to the Surfaces tab, click Planar Surface, and make that a planar surface. Okay. Again, I'm going to put on an appearance to that, or a color. So instead of changing the transparency this time, I'm going to go down and I'm going to find a glass. I'm going to pick a brown glass as that background. So because it is glass, it's already see-through, but it has kind of a color tinge to it as well. We can hide plane 1 now because we don't actually need that anymore. And so our model so far now, we have a vertical plane, horizontal plane, and our auxiliary plane. So I'm going to project the outline of this onto our auxiliary plane, giving us an end view, and then in the end view, we're going to rotate that into its new position. So if I start a sketch on that auxiliary plane, trace the outline of the square-based or the rectangular-based pyramid, okay, and I'm going to close that sketch. So that sketch there is just the outline, and what I'll do at this point is I'm going to change the sketch color of that to something bright, so yellow. Also at this point, what I'm going to do is I'll name that. So right click on it and rename it. So we'll go down to rename tree item, and I'm going to type in outline So outline 1. And before we go any further, I'm actually going to rename that loft as well, because there's going to be 2 lofts when we're finished this. So go up, right click on loft, rename tree item, and name that construction pyramid. Okay, so now if we're looking for that later on, if you're showing students, you can very easily find the outline there and the construction pyramid because they're named. The next sketch we're going to do is we're going to have to rotate this. So we're rotating this apex the whole way around until it hits the XY line. We're rotating it about this point here, so we're kind of hinging it on this point. So that'll be the center of our arc. Rotate that down until it hits the XY line. So I'm going to start a new sketch. I'm going to go for a center point arc. I'm going to go from this center point to the apex and rotate that. Now that came out very easily for me. If it was drawing the circle in the other direction like that, what you do is just keep going over it a few times until it appears in the right direction. So if that's the wrong direction there, just go back to the apex and then draw it out, and it should come out in the proper direction. Click that then when it's down the XY line and go over to the left and say it's for construction. So we can tick that. Now we need to draw another one where this point comes down. So we're going to do another center point arc, same center point, but this edge over here. Okay, and we don't know really yet how far that is. We'll just draw it somewhere and make that for construction as well. Now, what we do know about this object, no matter how we rotate it, the distance of this edge here will always stay the same. So the distance from the apex down to that base point. So we have our new apex over here. So we can swing this distance from the apex, and where it hits this will give us our other point. Another way to do that is use a smart dimension tool. Click this, okay, it'll be grey, it won't let you change it, that's fine. I'm only clicking it to see the measurement. So it says 76.55. So if I click escape to get out of that, now I want to make the distance from this point to this point here, across, now not down the way or not over the way, like that between them. I want to make that 76.55. So the same distance again. Okay. So when you've that done, both the lines are black, they're fully defined. So we can close that sketch as well. Now I'm going to color that sketch, I'm going to color that sketch a different color now. I'm going to say that's red or maybe green. Red shows up better. And I'm going to rename that as well. So this one I'm going to rename the rotation because that is showing the rotation of the object. Now I'm going to have a third sketch showing the object in its new position. So I'm going to start on that surface, a new sketch, draw a solid line from this point because it stays the same. It's hinging around that point, up to our new base point, up to our new apex, and down there again. So now we can see what that rectangular base pyramid looks like when this edge face rests on the horizontal plane. Hopefully that makes sense at this point. If you have the drawing lab done at this point too, you will recognize this from doing the drawing. Close that sketch. I'm going to rename that new position. And you can change the color of that to something bright as well. So now we have a sketch on the end plane or the auxiliary plane, so that's our end view basically, of where it was, how it was rotated, and where it is now. Now we want to find the actual 3D object where it is now. We're going to use this to help us. So what we're going to do is going to create a new plane for the base of it to rest on. So I'm going to go up to Features, Reference Geometry, and Plane. We have points on that now. So what I can say is this is a point in the plane, this is a point in the plane, and this here is also a point in the plane. Now, okay, what I'll do is go reference geometry plane. If we have a line and a point, it should do. So that baseline actually, and this top point will do. So that's blue now, it's fully defined. So that is a new plane where our base is going to rest after it has been rotated in the end view. So close that. We're going to start a sketch on that plane too now. Okay, and we're going to sketch that base. So we can just use the dimensions we had from the original plan. We're starting in that corner because that bottom edge stays on the horizontal plane as it's rotating around that. Smart dimension, and I'm going to make that 80 by 52. Now, it may be no harm just to check that to make sure that is what it was. So, yeah, 80 by 52 was that base, and that is fully defined, so it's black. We can close. Actually, we'll draw the center line as well. So from the center point of that vertical line on the left, whole way through, okay, and what we'll do is we'll dimension that the same as we did before. So I'll just check that measurement again, and it's 36 mil from the end there. So from this end out to that point is 36 mil. So now we can close that sketch there. So now what I'm going to do is do another 3D sketch. Go up to sketch, drop down, click 3D sketch, and do another center line. From that endpoint out the way somewhere here, right? It won't click into place, so just put it somewhere for now, and we'll deal with adding relations now in a second. So you can see the line is blue, it's not fully defined, it's not at the right angle. What we're going to do, hold control, select the line, select that plane 2, and we're going to make them perpendicular. So we want it perpendicular to that plane, and now we want this point here on the horizontal plane. So select the point, hold control, select the horizontal plane, and we add this relation on plane. So that is fully defined now. We have this point out at the very edge. All right, so if we made that bottom of the horizontal plane slightly longer, it wouldn't be on the edge. It doesn't really matter. If you want to do that, you can add on something to the 150 mil, maybe make it 200. But now we have the apex and we have the base. Right, so I'm going to close that sketch. I'm going to make that horizontal plane slightly bigger. So I'm going to edit that original sketch. I'm just going to add on something. I'll make it 200 mil instead of 150. Okay. Right, so now we can see there's something wrong there. This is extended out, but if we look at this view here, the line isn't parallel to the edges. So if we go back, edit that sketch, we have to make this center line. So click it, hold control, select an edge. We will have to make them parallel. So what's wrong there? There's too many relations. If I look here, this relation has been added by accident, so it shouldn't be coincident with that top edge. I click that and delete it. Everything else works out then. So it should be horizontal across there. If I close that, it should update the other sketch with it. Okay, I know it's a bit hard to see there, but now our point is in here on the plane somewhere. All right, so it shouldn't be out at the edge. So when we have that now, what we can do, actually I forgot to add a point, so just add a point at the top of that sketch there, and then we can close that sketch. Go into features, lofted boss base, click the base, click the apex, and tick that. Now we have this a rectangular based pyramid in its rotated view. I'm going to hide plane 2 just to make things a bit tidier. Okay, and I'm going to put a color on that. So I'm just going to make it, I'll actually make it the same color as the original one. Now, something I forgot to mention, if we just edit that loft, make sure to scroll down and have merged result unticked. So that's fine on my one. If yours is ticked, just take the tick away from it. Now we have 2 rectangular based pyramids, okay, one in its original position, one in the rotated position. So if you're looking at the end view, you can see that. What we can do now is rename the second loft. So I'm going to rename tree item, and I'm going to say Um, New position, pyramid. And what you could do now in a classroom is you could hide the new position one, talk through how we projected the end view, rotated that around, and then what you could do is hide the original one and show the new position one. So you can see the different views of it then. Okay, or you could show the both. It's up to yourselves how you do it. Okay, make sure to label vertical plane, horizontal plane, your traces, label different points. So you could label points 1, 2, and 3, and then show them rotated around here. So it might be 2A and 3A when you rotate them into their new position. Okay, something else I want to point out this week, and I want you to try out, is to export this to eDrawings. So if you go up to the Save button, click the drop down arrow and say Publish to eDrawings. Now don't do that until you've put in all the labels as well. So this pop-up will come up then, just click OK. It'll do a few movements to get the different views, and it might take a moment then for eDrawings to pop open as well. So the window then for eDrawings pops open. Okay, so you can see then the part in eDrawings. The benefit of that now is that it's one part rather than all these different kind of features and sketches and everything. That is just one file there, so you can share that with students. Another benefit of that is you can use that as part of augmented reality, which I'll be showing you in the lab, and that is the first step to getting that to work.